Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. Today, I was poking around in the McKay Diaries. This is on the University of Virginia's website for Mormon studies, which is full of gems. We've looked at it many times. And I found something new. And it leads me to believe that there may be certain times of the year and certain days when the church may make a major announcement in regard to historic sites here in Missouri. The Temple Lot, Adamonde-Amen, Far West. This is something that we've talked about before a little bit, but I found something that I think solidifies that idea. So let me show you a few pictures first. This is a picture of the Kirtland Temple back in 2024. I was there for the total solar eclipse. It was the day after conference. And the month before, the month of March, is when the church purchased the Kirtland Temple from Community of Christ. I don't know if the timing was significant, but if you'll recall, it was March 27th that the Kirtland Temple was originally dedicated. I do tend to think that it was intentional. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. I don't know if it's just me, but what happened was it was purchased. I think it was purchased and announced on the 5th of March, and then it was closed for 20 days so that it would reopen under its new ownership just in time for that anniversary. Not that the church necessarily did anything special for the anniversary that I'm aware of, but it was open in time for the anniversary for anybody that was blessed enough to be there to experience that. Okay, so that's one thing. We've talked about the Nauvoo Temple. I should have pulled up a picture of the Nauvoo Temple that I've taken, but we've talked about how the reconstructed Nauvoo Temple was dedicated on the day, the anniversary of Joseph and Hiram Smith's martyrdom, and around the same time of day. So you can see that there's a pattern here. And so like I said earlier, I wonder about Far West. This is land that the church already owns. The thing is, I don't think that we have enough members of the church that live in this area. I don't know if they would build this temple the way it was originally going to be built, which wouldn't have been one that has like a celestial room or baptistry. From what I understand, this would have been like the Kirtland Temple as well as the temple in Independence. So I don't know what the future plans are, but I assume that there's more membership needed in Far West. But whenever that announcement comes, or whenever they decide to do a groundbreaking ceremony or dedicate it, is there a certain day on which they would do it? And the same thing for the Temple Lot, whether it's the purchase or after the purchase, the groundbreaking, after the groundbreaking, the dedication. Same thing with if Community of Christ ever sells its Spiral Temple, which is its world headquarters. Would the church want to purchase that at a certain time of the year? And then we've also talked about the auditorium. Now, in the last video I did about this, we were talking about this date right here. So this is a sign on the Temple Lot across the street from the auditorium. And it talks about the fact that it was August 3rd, 1831, that Joseph Smith came to Independence. Him and 7 other men were here for the dedication of the temple site. And it was Sidney Rigdon that dedicated the temple site. And then Joseph Smith laid not like a full-size cornerstone, but like a stone to mark the corner of where the temple should be. The northeast corner. Yeah, northeast corner. Well, let's go to what I found in the David O. McKay diary excerpts. Again, this is the University of Virginia's website for Mormon studies. And we have this supplemental entry. There's a lot of supplemental entries in his diaries from other people. The ones that we've read have mostly been from his counselor, Alvin Dyer. At this time, I don't think he was yet in the first presidency, but let me show you something really interesting. Friday, November 3rd, 1968. Independence Preliminary Sketches of Building. So they're talking about the Independence Visitor Center. I know that we've talked about this a lot lately, but I found this information here, so I got to report on it. Elder Marky Peterson and I met with President McKay at 9:30 a.m. As we arrived, the president said, "I've been waiting for you." He was in good spirit and seemed alert and anxious to again discuss the Independence Project with us. We showed him the preliminary sketches that Emil Fetzer, who was the church architect, and I had shown to Keith Wilson, the Independence city manager. The details of the sketches were explained. It had been 8 months since the details of the project had been explained to the president, so we went over them again to refresh his understanding. He asked 2 questions in particular. These pertained to the significance of Independence as the center place and how much the visitor center would cost. These were answered, and it appeared plainly that the president just wanted to get the facts in his mind again. Okay, later on, we spoke of having a ceremony there on the land, either to break the ground or lay a cornerstone, depending on the progress of the work, on August 3rd, 1968, the anniversary of the dedication and consecration of the temple land by the prophet Joseph Smith, August 3rd, 1831. I've made it abundantly clear, but just in case there's somebody new watching my channel, the Independence Visitor Center was constructed to be a visitor center for now, but the dimensions match the dimensions that were revealed to Joseph Smith for the 24 temple complex. There's supposed to be 24 temples, and this is part of the temple land that the church was able to purchase. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, maybe it's part of the Lord's plan, some of these splinter groups came back to Independence before we did, and so that's why Church of Christ Temple Lot has the Temple Lot. Community of Christ has its presence in the area and owns some of the temple land, but we own this portion. They consulted the original plan for the 24 temple complex and determined which temple this would be and constructed it in the right spot. So this is built to be a temple, to be obviously renovated, probably changed, but you have the basic structure there to create a future temple. So it's interesting with that in mind that they decided to do the groundbreaking on the anniversary of the dedication of the temple lot. I think the dedication was just for that one, like the first temple that would have been built on the temple lot. But still, they did this intentionally. This is why I think we can reasonably expect that either an announcement having to do with Far West, the Independence Visitor Center being turned into a temple, the purchase of the temple lot, the purchase of the auditorium, whatever, something at Adamondiaman. This is why I think we can reasonably expect that either the announcement or the groundbreaking or the dedication may happen on a special day, according to whichever site it is that we're talking about. All right, let's continue. There's a few other interesting things, and then we're going to talk about Far West as well. So if August 3rd would be a special day for the temple lot and for, I guess, Independence in general, what would be a special day for Far West? We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay. The president gave approval to this plan. Elder Peterson then said, excuse me, "You know, President, certain of the brethren do not approve of this project. Let's just keep in mind, the brethren are left to problem solve and to think for themselves. It is the Lord that directs his church, but the brethren counsel together, and we aren't just given all the answers. It's like that in our personal lives. It's also like that with the church, although we can be assured that the church is not going to go astray. It could make mistakes, it could experiment, and certain things could not work out the way that the church wanted it to. But with the things that are really important, especially, I don't think the Lord is going to let things fail. So this doesn't surprise me. President, certain of the brethren do not approve of this project. He suggested that the president send a letter to his counselors requesting that they do everything possible to see that the architectural and other work go forward immediately, since he had given complete approval to it. I reported that even though he had directed the letter of April 13th to Elder Peterson that the project had run into a snag and was never budgeted, the president asked who had opposed it. We told him it was primarily his counselors. And this is not to throw any shade on his counselors. I don't think that they were like apostate. They may just have had some like genuine concerns like, can we afford that right now? And this is the reason we thought a letter to them signifying his desires in the matter would settle the matter once and for all. The president authorized us to prepare the letter, which we later did in Elder Peterson's office. It was thereafter placed in the hands of Claire Middlemiss for typing and mailing to the counselors. Note, the letter was typed, signed by the president, and sent to the counselors this day. A copy is made a part of his. This copy is made a part of this journal record. It goes on. I guess I probably don't need to go over this. It's basically a repeat of what we've already talked about, but the cost was approximately $500,000. He points out the fact in the letter that this is on temple land, which should probably give it more significance as to, what we're doing here. In that it should happen as soon as possible. And then it is my desire that we break ground for this new structure on August 3rd, 1968, which is the anniversary of the dedication of this ground by the prophet Joseph Smith. It's fitting because, again, I guess I'm not sure if the dedication was just for that first primary temple or the whole 24 temple complex. Maybe there would have been I know that there would have been probably a dedication for each temple. I don't know if there would have been like a separate groundbreaking ceremony for each one. Maybe there would. Maybe they would be done in phases, one at a time. I don't know. But whatever the case, I like that, which is the anniversary of the dedication of this ground by the prophet Joseph Smith. Sincerely yours, David O. McKay, President. Okay, so August 3rd. I don't know exactly when I'm gonna publish this, but it's definitely going to happen in the month of May. Excuse me. So it'd be really great if we got some kind of announcement in August, or maybe before August, maybe July, June, something like that, or the purchase completed of like the temple lot or something like that in August. I'm not holding my breath. I'm just saying that would be great. So this is a time of the year to maybe think about where something could happen. Let's see. And then what's interesting with the Independence Visitor Center, I just want to highlight a couple things. This is, we're looking at the August 1971 ensign. The first prophet of the last dispensation is the name of this talk by President Joseph Fielding Smith. So President McKay had passed away before they dedicated the Independence Visitor Center. And so when it was dedicated, President Joseph Fielding Smith was president of the church. I just want to read this. We've covered this before, but I think it's so fascinating. The following address by President Joseph Fielding Smith was delivered at the dedication of a new visitor center at Independence, Missouri on May 31st, 1971. I looked into it. I didn't see anything in church history that was significant that would, like, why they would choose this date for the dedication. The thing that pulled up, like the AI answer, was since it was like Memorial Day, that's why it was chosen, just so it'd be a good day for a large event like this. One thing that I think is really interesting, though, is that you have this member of the Smith family that's dedicating this visitor center, which is a temple in waiting. Joseph Fielding Smith is not a direct descendant of Joseph Smith. He's a direct descendant of Hiram Smith. But it's appropriate, I think, that you have a Joseph Smith dedicating this building. Don't you think? Okay, continuing. The services were held outside, accompanied by much thunder and lightning, but only a drop or two of rain. As soon as the services were completed, a drenching rain began falling. And so for this reason, because this happened, I have it on my spreadsheet called Signs Church Specific. There's been a number of things like this where there's a groundbreaking, there's a dedication, and the weather clears up so that it doesn't get interrupted. We had it happen with the Palmyra, New York temple. We had it happen with the groundbreaking for the Ephraim, Utah temple. We had it happen a couple times for President Nelson when he went to go speak to large groups of people outdoors, like in Seattle at Safeco Field, and also I think in Samoa. All right, continuing. Independence is of great historical significance to the church since the area was designated by Revelation to Joseph Smith as the City of Zion. Land for a temple was dedicated in 1831. The new visitor center is on a portion of that land. President N. Eldon Tanner of the First Presidency gave the dedicatory address and prayer. There are other articles that take note of the things that took place during the dedication. This is a church news article. It first starts out talking about the 25-year anniversary of the Independence Visitor Center. I just want to read this first part. An overflow crowd attended the 25-year anniversary of the Independence Visitor Center recently, witnessing a program that included talks by a church area authority and stake president, music from a 100-voice choir, and congratulations from the mayor of the city. I checked, and this year it'll have been 55 years since it was dedicated, so I don't know if they did anything for the 50th anniversary, but just so you know. Elder Robert H. Parker, Visitor Center Director, noted the overflow crowd was sitting and standing everywhere. Quote, although everyone couldn't see, they could hear and they could feel the Spirit. It was wonderful, he commented. Patriotic and inspirational music was presented by local musicians, including the Regional Heart of America Mormon Choir. Later on, K.H. Christensen, area authority, reminded the audience that the visitor center is located just a few feet from the property dedicated by Joseph Smith in 1831 as the temple site in the land appointed to be, because some people doubt this, to be the center place or city of Zion. And then later on, it talks about the original dedication in 1971, and it notes and gives a little bit more detail. Rain and tornado warnings threatened the proceedings, but following a prayer asking for the elements to be tempered, the clouds separated and no rain fell. Immediately following the benediction, an avalanche of rain drenched the participants. When we were living in Kansas, there was an older brother in our ward. He was actually the bishop when we first moved into the ward. He told me that he was at the dedication and he experienced this, and it really impacted him. Um, but I didn't know that there were, like, when we say rain and tornado warnings, I don't know if that means the same thing now as it did back in 1971. Right now, a tornado warning means there is a tornado on the ground, and or it's there's a tornado imminent. I think at the very least it's imminent, or it's on the ground. So you need to take shelter for sure. Whereas a tornado watch means it's possible. I don't think that there's any such thing as a rain warning, but there are like severe thunderstorm warnings. But so whatever the case, I don't know exactly what was going on here. If there was like what we would consider today a tornado and severe thunderstorm warning, or just a watch, but something was going on with the weather and with the forecast where they felt like there could be tornadoes at the very least. And then we have this. This is also church news this week in church history. It also noted that same thing. Nearly 5,000 persons attended the outdoor ceremony under skies which cracked with lightning and reverberated with thunder. It's fascinating because I don't know exactly what power the adversary has. It seems like he has some power over things like this. And it's just interesting how many times this type of thing happens with like significant sites, like the Palmyra, New York temple. The first time in this dispensation that we hear of opposition from the adversary was in the Sacred Grove when Joseph Smith went to go pray. And so now, all this time later, in the year 2001, there's a temple there. So it makes sense that if the adversary has power over that kind of thing, that it wouldn't have been favorable conditions. But because of God and his greater power, it was broken up and they were able to go ahead and do it. And then the same thing here. I mean, this is where the Garden of Eden was. This is where Adam and Eve were cast out. And we know Satan's involvement in that story. And of course, it was meant to happen. But this is a place where this is the first place that we hear of Satan on earth. Of course, he was in the premortal life, like we think about the council in heaven. But on earth, this is the first time that Satan makes his appearances in this place. So does it make sense that for these particular sites, Palmyra, the Independence Visitor Center, which is meant to become a temple later on, that you would have something like this happen? It makes sense to me. Okay. So that's the Independence Visitor Center. I don't know about Adamondiaman because I don't know if we know the date that Brigham Young dedicated the temple site at Adamondiaman. Let me go back in time here. I don't think I have it on my timeline. This is my spreadsheet called Timeline Missouri. I'm trying to reconstruct church history in Missouri. I wanted specifically to know what have been the milestones as the church has started to return to Missouri. What are the key moments? Who are the key players? And it's been fascinating to do this, and I'm still working on it. It doesn't look like I have anything on here for Adamondiaman. So if like something was announced with Adamondiaman, I don't have that date. And I don't know if the date is known when the temple site was dedicated by Brigham Young on Spring Hill. But as far as the far west temple site goes, we have two dates to think about. We're going to go to the scriptures for this. So the first one is Doctrine and Covenants 115, verses 8 through 11. Therefore, I command you to build a house unto me for the gathering together of my saints, that they may worship that they may worship me. And let there be a beginning of this work and a foundation and a preparatory work this following summer. And let the beginning be made on the 4th day of July next. And from that time forth, let my people labor diligently to build a house unto my name. And in 1 year from this day, let them recommence laying the foundation of my house. Well, the next year, the saints had been, by that point, the saints had been driven out of Missouri. They were driven out of Missouri this year in which this command was given. And of course, the Lord knew that. What's interesting, though, is that he selected the 4th of July for essentially the groundbreaking of the Far West Temple. And if we go back to my timeline, there's this interesting story. Let's see. I'll go okay, you can see it. So this is told by Emily Partridge, youngest daughter of Bishop Edward Partridge. And she talked about the 4th of July right here. And then she says, our national flag, the stars and stripe attached to the Liberty Pole, floated gaily in the breeze. All were happy and joyful, as none but the saints know how to be. Shortly after the 4th, a terrible storm arose, and thunder and lightning were terrific. The Liberty Pole was struck and shattered by a bolt of lightning, foreshadowing coming events as the sequel proved. So we had this. The Lord allows people to have their agency, both the saints and the enemies of the church, but he can work around that and still bring his purposes to fruition, even though he allows them to be delayed. And so July 4th, July 4th may be one of those special days for the Far West Temple site. Either the temple could be announced on that day, like it is finally time to build this temple, or the recommencement, because it's said in the scripture, in the scripture that like the beginning was supposed to be on the 4th of July, but then it was supposed to be recommenced exactly a year later. So wouldn't it make sense that a modern day groundbreaking, a recommencement of the building of the temple would happen on the 4th of July? That would be fascinating. Maybe it'll be, I'd like it to be sooner than later, but maybe it'll be in 2038, 200 years later. I don't know. But the 4th of July, and then there is another date. If we go to Doctrine and Covenants 118, it says, now this is directed toward some of the apostles that were supposed to, this was given before the saints were driven out of Missouri. And the apostles were supposed to go on a mission overseas. And this is the instruction that was given from the Lord. And next spring, let them depart to go over the great waters, and there promulgate my gospel, the fullness thereof, and bear record of my name. Let them take leave of my saints in the city of Far West on the 26th day of April next. So that would have been when the saints were in Nauvoo. And so to fulfill this command, they had to come back to Far West. And that's what they did. And the enemies of the saints said that if there was any prophecy that was not going to happen, it was going to be this one, because there was a date that was given to it. They knew who was going to be involved in this prophecy or this command, and when it was going to take place, and where. So there was discussion about whether, because at the time that they were supposed to do this, Joseph Smith was in the Liberty Jail. He was in the Liberty Jail when this was supposed to be fulfilled. And so there was debate on whether it was still necessary. But they decided to go ahead and do it. They came, they laid the cornerstone because maybe they didn't lay the actual cornerstones that first time, or maybe they were just like place marker stones. But they laid the cornerstones, or at least one of them. And the one that's in the southeast corner is the one that Wilford Woodruff and George A. Smith were ordained apostles, because they had to fill the spots of a couple apostles who had apostatized. Okay, so on the 26th day of April next, on the building spot of my house, saith the Lord, let my servant John Taylor, and also my servant Johnny Page, and also my servant Wilford Woodruff, and also my servant Willard Richards be appointed to fill the places of those who have fallen, and be officially notified of their appointment. So I don't know the history. I don't know why George A. Smith isn't mentioned here, but he is one that was ordained. So maybe something happened between this and 1839. Okay, so let's go back through these pictures really quick. So the Kirtland Temple was purchased by the church in the same month in which it was first dedicated. It was purchased in advance of the anniversary and closed for the necessary amount of time to do whatever they were doing. I don't know if they were like fixing it up, or I don't know what they were doing, but then it opened in time for the anniversary. And it's amazing how that played out. Far west, the time of year to think about would be probably the real one to really think about would be July 4th, or possibly, June, because if there was like an announcement, maybe the announcement would be in June and then groundbreaking would be on July 4th. I don't know. Or maybe even May. Maybe they would announce it on May, and then a couple months later, that's when they would do a groundbreaking. And then April 26th. Now, for this year, we're now past April, so we don't really need to expect that for this year. And then for these different properties here in Independence, we got the Temple lot. We have the Community of Christ Temple, potentially. Again, the latest from them is they said that they're going to be spending $10 million this year to fix up the temple and the auditorium, and that they intend to stay here. So I guess we'll see if that's what takes place. But they do have some financial problems with a decrease in tithe payers, and it's pretty dramatic. And they've said that they need to find some kind of fix by 2030. Otherwise, they're going to have to probably do drastic things. So the temple and or the auditorium, potentially. So if either one of these are sold, the announcement or the purchase date or something could happen in August or around that time frame. Or if the church keeps these buildings, we've talked about the fact that when Orson Pratt was talking about the primary temple of the New Jerusalem, it kind of sounded like the auditorium, because he said it would be large and circular and be arched over the top, and that it would have 24 compartments and it would seat thousands of people. And that sounds very similar to the auditorium. So I don't know. If the church purchased these buildings, they may keep them for a while and actually use them. I would love to see a session of General Conference held in the auditorium. That would be really interesting. And that could be where Christ makes his appearance to the New Jerusalem, if it happens in a very literal way. And if this turns out to be like the main temple, maybe that's how it'll happen. And then, of course, the Independence Visitor Center. By the way, this pink right here in the sky, this is the aurora. This was toward the end of it. I took most of my pictures up at the temple lot and around the Community of Christ temple. By the time I walked down here, it was starting to fade. But this is the aurora up there. But whenever they decide to not that whenever they decide, but whenever the Lord directs that the Independence Visitor Center be renovated and turned into a temple, then for all these things, we can look at August 3rd, potentially, of whatever year it is. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.